We will note that Dukow began with a mulligan. He missed a few land drops, and even despite the mulligan, had to discard to hand size. But Adrian Sullivan also with 5 lands, and this is not an emergency situation. Both players just want to continue being patient, not leave themselves too vulnerable.
Dukow, by the way, 12-1. Adrian Sullivan, 11-2.
So we're in Adrian's end step before discard, before cleanup.
Chemist's Insight there from Dukow, met with a negate from Sullivan. Something that you said that really stuck with me from a previous tournament read was when we were watching these control mirrors, is that control is played in the hand, not necessarily on the battlefield.
Yes, that's definitely true, particularly these mirror matches here. So you may have thought that was a Search for Oscanta, the checklist card from Adrian Sullivan. Nope, it's a treasure map.
Wow.
Met by Sinister Sabotage. And Dukow actually going to bin a second copy of Sinister Sabotage. That must be a bit painful because that card is so important in the matchup, but he's really, really focusing on trying to find those land drops.
All right, we're going to discard a Drake here to jumpstart this Chemist's Insight for Lucas. Adrian here taking a think about that. There's the Ionize. Back over to Dukow. Legion Warboss.
We've also had some debate as this format has developed in Sinister Sabotage versus Ionize in this deck. I tend to think that Sinister Sabotage has the better effect, but Ionize has the more affordable mana cost. And you see there Adrian Sullivan able to Ionize, only 2 blue mana available to him, but the fact that he can cast multiple blue spells in the same turn because he has Ionize instead of Sinister Sabotage, that could come in big. Here we see a fight over the Legion Warboss.
Banefire met with counter spells and gates. In the end, the Legion Warboss falls. 1 goblin left behind, and here is Ral for Lucas Dukow. How do you like Ral in the mirror?
That's a fine question. Ral is a really good card. I think he's a bit weaker than Teferi, so I don't know exactly the ideal split of Teferi and Ral, but you know they have pretty similar effect, and Ral is going to be better in some niche situations, for example against Niv Mizzet, for example if your Teferi gets Ixalan's Binding.
And here we see Teferi from Sullivan.
Here also you see the power of Legion Warboss. Normally we might see a pattern like this that ends with Teferi tucking the opposing Planeswalker going on to 1, but that 1 Goblin token left behind making it really difficult for Adrian to make a play like that.
Instead, he just plussed his Teferi there. 3 mana open. Here's Crackling Drake from Lucas. It's good. Draw a card. Goblin knocks Teferi down to 4 in this duel of the Planeswalkers.
Sullivan, the man who told us earlier that Crackling Drake does not belong in Jeskai Control.
That's true.
Let's see if he is able to defeat Crackling Drake version, the more traditional version, with his more unique take on the archetype. Uh-oh, here comes 6 mana.
What's it going to be, Sullivan? And it is, in fact, Niv Mizzet.
But I'll tell you what, you set this well, Maria, with Ral, Izzet Viceroy. This is one of the key situations where it is going to be more effective than Teferi. But Teferi answers the Ral.
Ral tucked down in Dukow's library, but that means Teferi has to go to 1, and Ixalan's Binding on Niv Mizzet takes care of the dragon. Now we can attack just the Goblin at Teferi, get rid of that. Crackling Drake in for damage. Adrian Sullivan down to 10. Crackling Drake number 2 here for Dukow. All right, Adrian Sullivan really up against it.
However, Adrian Sullivan with a Cleansing Nova in his hand, 2 good options available to him with that card. He can either clear out Dukau's creatures, or he can free his Niv Mizzet from Ixalan's Binding.
Oh, sweet. See what he wants to do. Yep, he's just going to clear up the board of creatures with that Cleansing Nova and pass the turn. Still has time yet to worry about the Ral. And there's a Teferi of Dukau's own. Plus, draw. And Ixalan's Binding here from Sullivan. All right, it takes care of Teferi. This match has been pretty swingy.
Yeah, definitely. I see that Dukau has, I believe, an instant speed answer to that Ixalan's Binding, so this might turn out well for him if he can free up his Teferi at the end of the turn.
There's Invoke the Divine on your screen right now. That's the instant speed answer we was talking about. Gain 4 life as well.
Attention Magic players in the 130 Modern. Your pairing.
By the way, Lucas Dukau at 12-1. If he wins this match, we believe that he's in our top 8. That would have 2 Jeskai players already locked for top 8.
Wow.
With Dukau meeting Isaac Kroot at the top of the standings.
Here's Teferi from Sullivan. 2 cards left in hand. Plus, make that 3, untap couple of lands.
By the way, a little bit confusing with the placement of the Ixalan's Bindings, but that is Adrian's Ixalan's Binding taking Dukau's Teferi.
Yes.
So there's no issue with Adrian casting Teferi there.
And there is that Invoke the Divine dealing with the Ixalan's Binding. Teferi there, tucking another Teferi down to 1. A lot of action here in this control mirror. Really fun stuff this round here in round 14. Remember, this is game 3 between these 2 players.
Yeah, this has been a fascinating game. Dukau has been ahead for most of the game, except for that very early stage where he was missing land drops. But Adrian never really able to stick a threat that provided a long-term advantage. But let's see what happens here with the Ixalan's Binding. Either able to take out the Teferi again or free up his Niv Mizzet.
Lucas here just going to gain some life and draw a card.
So here he's responding to the trigger of Ixalan's Binding.
And now Sullivan has both Niv Mizzet and his own Teferi in play.
Yeah, and really nice there, able to draw a card, ping down the last 1 loyalty on the opposing Teferi. But Dukau should have Ral, which can kill Niv Mizzet and get him right back into the game.
Ooh, disdainful stroke here from Adrian.
Oh, geez, and Dukau has Expansion Explosion, which if it had been a negate, he could use to counter, but not a disdainful stroke.
There's a syncopate on the disdainful stroke, so Niv Mizzet is going to fall.
So Dukau, in a way, winning that counterspell battle, but Adrian Sullivan, from having, a small number of cards left in hand, he refueled due to that Niv Mizzet, got the Teferi off the battlefield. Now this game is highly competitive yet again. There's Treasure Map.
Card we've seen in big red decks all weekend, but not here in Jeskai until Adrian brought it to the table. I love his pumpkin sleeves too.
Yeah, those are cool.
So
it's very seasonal.
Oh yes. Treasure Map, what is this doing for Adrian? Just card advantage? Drawing cards?
Well, the real subtlety that Adrian highlighted in his interview earlier is the mana. Being able to flip the treasure map, get 3 treasures, set up something like a Niv Mizzet with a protection spell backup. That's what he's really loving about treasure map, but still the ability to scry and get the card advantage in the late game. Those utility lands pair really nicely with Teferi, getting to use them twice in the same turn. Treasure Map has done a lot of good work for Adrian Sullivan over the course of the weekend.
So Teferi tucking Ral there. But now a Teferi for Lucas once again. And there's a search for Escanta. Back over to Sullivan.
Search for Escanta, another one that Adrian Sullivan has eschewed. He said it doesn't flip fast enough, and it's too mana inefficient in the late game to be activating the ability. He prefers Treasure Map.
Interesting to see these two cards go toe-to-toe here. Treasure Map up to 2. Teferi plus here, another Niv Mizzet in hand for Sullivan.
Nice subtle little play from Adrian there. He took his draw step, then he scryed with Treasure Map before plussing his Teferi, so staggering his scries in a nice way there. Get maximum value.
Takes care of the other Teferi. Here's Escanta flipping. Land drop for Lucas. And there's Ral back to the party once again. We're going to take a look at the top 2. They're both lands. One in hand, one in the yard. Adrian here, 3rd scry from the Treasure Map. Time to transform into Treasure Cove. And here's 3 treasure for your troubles. Adrian Sullivan down to 8 life. Lucas Ducau at 22. And there's Niv Mizzet once again here for Adrian Sullivan. Last time it was on the table, did a lot of work for him despite dying almost instantly.
I do think that is a significant advantage of Adrian Sullivan's build in this matchup. If he gets ahead on mana, if he has more copies of Niv Mizzet, that gives him such a dominant position in the late game, and it's difficult for Ducau to contend with just Niv Mizzets getting cast and generating value turn after turn.
Yeah, forget being a 5/5 flyer, uncounterable flyer. I just like to kill things and draw cards. And here we go. Opt. Ral down to 4. And 3.
Now if Sullivan can get the Ral below 3 loyalty, remember he has Ixalan's Binding on the opponent's Ixalan's Binding, so that really restricting the number of answers that Ducau can possibly have to Niv Mizzet at this stage of the game.
Is that Spell Swindle in Adrian Sullivan's hand?
Indeed it is. Talk about getting ahead on mana.
Wow. Oh my gosh. I really want to see that happen. There's a look at Spell Swindle. Very expensive counter spell, but you get a bunch of treasure tokens based on the countered spells converted mana cost.
Can you guess what card Adrian Spell swindled the last time he was on camera?
Ooh. Niv Mizzet?
Close. Carnage Tyrant. So that, of course, not succeeding in countering the spell, but generating 6 treasures often going to be good enough.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes you just want treasure. And here we see it cast, and there's a negate. And a counterspell battle here.
Sullivan actually just syncopating for 0 to get the extra trigger off Niv Mizzet.
So much value. A lot of awesome stuff left in his hand, too.
Oh, this is a cool play. However, there are a number of ways that Sullivan can free up the Niv Mizzet, including minusing his Teferi, drawing back into his Ixalan's Binding.
Yeah, so Teferi minus to tuck the Ixalan's Binding that was on a binding. So now the binding is on Niv Mizzet, but now Teferi minus is on that binding. Niv Mizzet comes back. It's another treasure map. Blink a few times and this game will have swung back and forth in opposite directions.
Yeah, it was Dukow ahead for a lot of the middle stages, but then once Sullivan was able to transform his treasure map and start deploying these Niv Mizzets with mana available, the raw power of his build of Jeskai has seemed to take over.
Treasure map scry here. First counter. Take a look at that. Push it to the bottom. All the mana in the world that you would ever need. In play 2, we're just going to keep the train rolling here with Niv in play. There's an opt pinging Teferi down to nothing into the graveyard. And that looks like a go from Adrian Sullivan. We're going to activate Ascanta here on Lucas Dukow's side of the battlefield. And there's an Ixalan's Binding that we're going to take. Legion Warboss was one of the draws there.
Bit late for that one.
Mm-hmm. Takes a hit from those steam vents down to 19. There's the Binding.
Is that 2 more Niv Mizzets
Yes.
in hand for Adrian Sullivan?
Yeah.
1 in the graveyard, 1 in play, 2 in hand.
Option response.
So hypothetically, if the Ixalan's Binding can actually get the Niv Mizzet, then Dukow is back in the game, but that's a tall order. I mean, Adrian Sullivan has just drawn so many cards.
There's Ionize. There's a Negate. Ping you. Does he have another answer? Expansion.
Gonna copy his own Ionize.
That's sick. Draw, ping. Man, is Lucas Dukow going to potentially die from just pings from Niv Mizzet?
It's hard to achieve that because, you know, Sullivan's library would be depleted at approximately the same rate as Dukow's life total. But we have to think at the point that Sullivan gets that far ahead, he's got to have to find...
Oh my gosh. Look at this stack, everybody, on the battlefield. There's another expansion explosion from Dukow in response. Does Adrian have something else? A third expansion explosion. And now the Ionize, 2 damage effects are adding up. Not to mention the Niv Mizzet pings. And there's a Syncopate. Is this a stack 7 or 8 deep?
Yeah, look at that. 8 spells. I'm a little bit lost on what the blank white cardboard represents. Maybe that's a Niv Mizzet trigger.
It might. Wow. All right, some real fireworks here in this control mirror.
And look, Dukow down to 1 card in hand. Sullivan holding half his library.
Yeah. Niv Mizzet, MVP, no question about this match. Lucas Dukow down to 12. Spell Pierce here from Adrian Sullivan. And now the stack is going to resolve bit by bit. And we'll see where we are at when the dust settles.
So that white cardboard was a Niv Mizzet trigger. So now the question is, what can Adrian Sullivan do with a tapped out opponent and 100 cards in his hand? Does he have a way to remove that Ixalan's Binding? Perhaps another Teferi?
Sure.
Perhaps a Blink of an Eye? Does he have any more Banefires or Expansion Explosions?
Scryed to the bottom there off the treasure map as it ticked up to 2. And sure enough, his own Ixalan's Binding.
So you have to figure that's going to be it. Adrian Sullivan only needs a few more spells to deplete Dukow's life total.
Opt. Let's draw a card. What else do we have? Yeah, this has just been a super sweet read to see that incredible stack of counter magic. Here's a Teferi to replace the other one. Interesting, you can see Dive Down at the front of Sullivan's hand, too, one of the key cards that he mentioned for him this weekend to protect his Niv Mizzet. Adrian tapping out a little bit of math on the table here. Lava coiling his own Niv Mizzet to get the trigger. Oh my gosh.
So he's going to get to untap 4 lands during the end step. If he has 4 spells, it'll be lethal. A card like Opt unloads 2 damage. He can untap his Treasure Cove and draw 1 that way. All
right, here we go. It's now or never, Lucas. Let's see what Azcanta can find here. Expansion Explosion.
Is it going to be enough? I mean, hypothetically, that's lethal.
Yeah. Are we all out of counterspell gas here from Sullivan?
However, Sullivan gets a triggered ability. Ducal only at 5. If
That's
Sullivan
true.
can draw 4 cards in response via dive downs, via opts, via any instance that he can find, he can still win the game. So this stack,
oh my gosh.
when this stack resolves, one of our players will be dead. Who it's going to be, I do not know.
This is so close. Oh my gosh. Okay, here's a dive down. I think he found his own expansion explosion.
Yep, that ought to do it.
How about another dive down for good measure here? Wow. Just on our edge of our seats here as we watch this game that's been so epic finally come to its conclusion. Sacrifice his treasure.
Table 3, Peter Sachurik and Jackson Hicks. And from table 6, Adam Hernandez and Lucas.
And there's expansion explosion, and there is the handshake.
Amazing.
Wow, what a game. Adrian Sullivan taking it down 2-1 in that Jeskai control mirror. Reed, what stands out to you the most from that game?
I mean, it was just awesome. I love to see the subtle differences in the deck lists playing such a big role there. Adrian Sullivan really overpowering his opponent with the 4 copies of Niv Mizzet. All those battles over the Ixalan's bindings, super cool. Dukehouse Ral coming in big a couple moments there, but Adrian Sullivan takes it down, which means both of those players will be 12-2, playing their win in next round, and we'll see if either or both of them can make the top 8.
Wow, really exciting stuff here from Grand Prix Milwaukee. You don't want to miss a minute of it. Next round is coming up in just a minute.